The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the Makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the Makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you're listening to the podcast, The Makers of Minnesota. We are on episode 105, which is pretty exciting. And I love podcasting with artists. We have an artist today. We have Dan Madsen. He is the sole proprietor of Dusty's Signs. Mm-hmm. And Dan, I found you literally on the side of a beer keg or grain holder over at Tattersall Distilling.
That's right. Yep.
You were all painted up, and Dan Oskey was like, "Hey, do you know this guy?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Yeah, he's a great sign painter." And I was like, "Oh, that'd be cool to talk to you."
Yeah.
So how long have you been in the sign painting business? And is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I do, is primarily just sign painting, paint and a brush. I don't do any vinyl stickers,
right?
Any electrical signs, just paint and a brush.
And is it, can you paint on anything?
Pretty much. Paint's very versatile. You can do textured surfaces, flat surfaces, you name it. Windows. It's super versatile. So
how long have you been doing
it? My business since about 2010, but I've been, painting letters and just drawing letters since, as long as I can remember. Being exposed to it from a very early age because of my grandfather, who was a calligrapher.
Oh,
and
sure.
And so that's kind of what got me interested in letters and lettering. And as I grew up, it just got a little more professional, I guess.
And is it really based and centered in the letters themselves? Like, is that, are you interested in fonts and just literally the letters, like you're not out there painting pigs and other things?
Right. I will paint murals and, other people's designs, but, I get the biggest enjoyment out of letters and logos and designs and, that custom side of it.
So tell me about your first project that you did that you got paid for.
Boy, there was a lot of free faking projects before I got paid for it. I wouldn't tell people that, but I would go into a business and pretty much just say, "Hey, I want to paint you a sign, and I'll do it for free," just because I just needed exposure. So I did a lot of bad signs out there for free, but
they might have been better than what they would have gotten.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a learning process. After high school, I got a job working at a sign shop where we did all kinds of signs,
Sure.
Big electrical signs, stickers, and I turned into the painter who sprayed everything with a spray gun. And my boss let me use the sign shop. And we're talking about Sign Minds. It's a sign shop still around in Northeast.
Oh, yeah.
So he let me use the shop as a studio space after hours. So it was just a lot of practicing in the studio. A lot of painting bad signs for people, on my weekends.
Yep.
And, boy, I couldn't even tell you what my first paying job was, but...
You don't remember?
I do not, no.
That is a true artist. I mean, I can remember the first radio commercial I sold.
Really?
I can remember the first ad I sold.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, I will say that my boss at the time knew that I was really into sign painting, and so every once in a while he'd sell a sign and be like, "You should get it hand painted." And then he'd kind of pass the job over to me.
Sure.
So I remember doing, a few signs through the sign company that I worked for, but
Yep.
This was way before me being Dusty Signs.
So at what point do you decide, okay, I'm working for this sign guy. He sounds like he was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
And supportive, but
Yeah.
you need to go out on your own.
Well, it was a gradual transition. So I started to get jobs on the side and my, boss at the time, Ben, he was like a really great mentor to me.
Yeah.
He would break it down how to price things and kind of he really showed me the business side of, sign painting. So Yeah,
How do you price a sign? Do you price it like by the square foot?
pretty much how a carpenter would price. Like I have an hourly rate, and I basically estimate how much time is going to go into a sign, and then add up the materials, and then I give the client, a solid number. I don't necessarily add it up hour by hour.
Yeah.
I basically estimate it and give them a solid price. And sometimes I do a little bit better. Sometimes I, put a little more time in, and that's just kind of how it works.
I was just going to ask, you must have a time where you've underestimated
always-
and you just
I always
lose
do.
money.
You always do. You always think you can get. There's so many variables that you can't control, whether it's the weather or maybe just timing with when you can get in the building and set up and
Yeah.
take down, and there's just so many variables that are out there.
Is there a sign that you did that you just love, that you just like, if you were going to tell people, this is my work right here?
Yeah, I think at the moment one of my favorite pieces that I've done is the newest Spy House in St. Paul, Spy House Coffee Shop.
In Highland Park? On
Yeah,
Snelling?
yep. Yeah, that's one of my favorites because he, I had painted some signs for his other locations, but with this new one, he was just open to ideas, and I basically got to get as creative as I wanted and pitched him this idea, and he just had total trust in my, crazy, scheme, and I don't know of any other signs that are similar, in the state of Minnesota, or even that I've really seen in this country. I kind of based it off of a very traditional British storefront,
Sure.
from 1800s or something like
Yeah.
that. But with a new twist to it.
Yep.
But yeah, so he let me go with that, and I'm really happy with how that one turned out. It's reverse glass gilded with 23 karat gold leaf, and then back painted with paints, and so there's a lot of
Well, I can't wait. I've been
yeah.
there a million times, and I don't
Yeah.
know that I've noticed it, so I'm going to go drive over there right after we're done today.
Yeah,
Go
when
look at
when
it.
the light hits it, it really it dances around and really catches your eye.
Is your business weather dependent? Because are most of these signs outside?
Yeah, primarily. You can't really paint when it's raining.
Yep.
In the winter, you can't paint with latex anymore. You can paint with oil-based paints, which I still do. The paint thickens; it turns into yogurt. So you just add a little more thinner, and you can keep going. The paint companies technically say don't do that, but painters have been doing that for hundreds and hundreds of years. Just
Like
add a
Van
little
Gogh.
thinner.
That's why he cut off his ear, dude.
Yeah,
Do you have to wear respirators, and do you worry about all that?
Yeah, so if I'm in the studio, I have a ventilation fan in my
Yep.
window that's always cycling air. Yes, I should wear a respirator, but I don't as much as I should. When I'm outside, I don't. The fresh air kind of takes care of it. And yeah, with water-based latex paint, you're good to go. It's not too hot. You could drink the stuff and you'd be fine, pretty much, compared to the oil.
Yeah. Just totally strange question.
Yeah.
Do you have painting clothes and non-painting clothes,
I
or
try
does
to.
everything just become paint clothes?
It slowly becomes paint clothes. You can see, I guess no one out there can see, but you can kind of see.
Yeah.
There's little spots here and there here, but these are some of my fresher, clothes. Yeah.
So how does the word get spread about you?
Oh man, I wish I knew. But I think primarily, I think Instagram does a big part of it.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's at Dusty Signs.
Okay. Who would have thought? Let's just go back to 2010 when you started.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who would have thought that your primary marketing vehicle would be something called Instagram?
I know. It's wild.
People just send you direct messages and hey, dude.
Well, I think that's the initial place where people maybe see me, and then they'll follow up with an email. And a lot of times it'll be hey, I've followed you on Instagram for quite some time, and I'm, going into this business, or I need a sign for, the place I work, or whatever.
Yep.
And it usually spreads that way. But back when I was first starting, my buddy is a videographer, and we were both kind of starting out with our dreams, I guess. And
Yep.
so he did a little video threw it on Vimeo, and it kind of just spread, and he could see, where people were viewing it, and it was just spreading and getting on blogs here and blogs there and typography blogs, and it kind of just took over, and that was a really big initial
Cool. Who was your friend that did the video?
Hunter Johnson. Yeah, I believe he's got a website, and it's Hunter Newcomb Johnson.
Okay, and he's a video guy.
Yeah, he's still in Minneapolis, and he does really great work.
Okay, that's really cool too. Is it super competitive? Like, I've interviewed Chank on the show. I've interviewed Adam Turman, who's doing more murals, but
yeah. I mean, yes and no. Like, it's such a niche that, like, there's not a lot of us, and we all seem to find our own little pockets of people and styles that, like, people will come to me for a specific style, I think at least, than, some of the other guys. And so, yes, it is kind of competitive because it's not a huge market, but you find your clientele based on, like, the style you gravitate towards.
And do you travel?
Yeah. I mean, I love working and traveling. For a while, I had a gig with Shinola, painting all their stores whenever they popped up, whenever they had a new store pop up, and I kind of rode that train as long as it would last. And I had a blast traveling and working. It just threw another element of, like, a little bit more pressure, but also just, like, really sharpening your craft and, like, making sure, like, okay, I'm flying to this place and I have this many days to do it. Like, I have to make the timeline.
It's funny you mentioned them. A friend of mine that actually originally got me started in being interested in entrepreneurs when I started a business, and she'd started a business, has become the vice president of manufacturing over there.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
And Detroit, just talk about such a great steward of that community.
Yeah.
And just Detroit is so cool. I don't know if you spent any time there specifically, but
totally.
I loved it there.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful cities I think I've been to. I mean, even given the fact of, it not thriving as it used to,
that it was a bombed out shell for
years,
and it's starting to really come around.
Totally,
and
yeah.
It's really got a cool maker scene.
A lot of potential.
Yeah,
it's
lot
growing.
of music, and very, very cool spot.
Totally.
How do you, like, get better? Do you read books? Do you go to art museums? Like, what do you see that inspires you to work on your craft?
Honestly, all of the above. I love going to museums. That's not necessarily where I get, like for sign painting or lettering, that's not necessarily the place to get lettering inspiration, but just, like, trying to stay creative in general and keeping, like, the creative side of my brain moving. I'm always, I paint for fun in my studio, on the side. I go to the library and check out, like, old books and advertisements, and I'm always just collecting cool designs from, you name it, like, whether it's, like, a clip out of a newspaper.
How do you organize all that stuff? Like, do you have Evernote or a clipboard, or?
I take a lot. So, like, a lot of the old books in the library you can't check out.
Sure. Do you go to James J. Hill?
I don't. Now, I normally go to the downtown one because they have a really good, they have a Minneapolis, like old Minneapolis part of the library, but also in the stacks. They have a lot of great inspiration in there of old stuff. But I take a lot of photographs, and then I, just archive photographs of designs and
Do you
whatnot.
have a system?
No. I should be more organized with that, but I'm not. I pretty much just have folders of, like, whether it's, like, strictly sign painting inspiration, or maybe just, like, cut out, of a newspaper inspiration, kind of like that. But just always just getting inspiration from pretty much the past. Like, you can't be it. Like, sign painting is timeless. The designs are timeless. They're just as good as they were when they first designed them as they are today. Like, that's, I think, why people enjoy sign painting, is because it's not super dated, and it's very relevant still.
Are there, when you look around, I mean, there's just some iconic buildings around town that the signs are still there and faded, but can you think of any that you just think are super cool?
Oh, man. Well, with the North Loop, like there's, even though it's all posh and, fancy nowadays, it used to be like the old warehouse district, and those signs are just so industrial and not romanticized. Like they were just like sign painters, just get up there and just do your thing, just slap this name on the side of the wall. And the sign painters just did their thing. Like there was no logos necessarily back then. They were just like slapping big letters on the side of brick walls. And I just love that aspect of sign painting. And so like anywhere in the North Loop you can catch, like I forget what the building is, but there's a lot of layers of signs, bleeding into each other, because they'd get painted over and then painted again, and then there'd be a new one, and so you get that I forget what they call it, but it's basically years and years of signs,
like a collage effect.
Yeah. But man, Minneapolis is actually really great for old sign painting. I love going over to St. Paul and the Summit Hill area, checking out people's transom windows, like the addresses gilded in their transom windows above their doors. Just the simplest things like that like most people might not notice, but someone at some point had to paint that letter or those numbers. And like I just get a big kick out of that.
Well, and I just, as you're saying that, because I live in that neighborhood. Yeah. And when you see like the numbering on a Frank Lloyd Wright house, you know right away that that's a Frank Lloyd Wright house or someone trying to replicate a Frank Lloyd Wright house. Like, So it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about home numbers and the style with which they lend themselves. Like
Victorian style homes, like when they were first built, it'd be pretty common that their address would be, Gildan 23 karat gold leaf, and the numbers are all very ornate and matching to the style of the house, and
that's cool.
So those little details were even thought out. You know what I mean? And a lot of like, I don't know. With that being said, a lot of old brick buildings, the architects and the designers, they would think about where signs would go, and in the brickwork on the tops of buildings or on the sides of buildings, they would be like, okay, this is where we're going to put the sign, and they would have slightly decorative brickwork kind of like around where the sign would be, and so like those little things were thought out from the very beginning,
Yeah, those
and
details.
It's just kind of interesting.
This is going to be a weird question, so prepare.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that it would be hard. Like we all think we have X amount of value for our worth, right? Like we know kind of what people in our industry make.
Yeah.
For artists and for you in particular, like you want enough money to be comfortable, but like how do you know when to like start charging more because you need a raise or that you just want to attract maybe a clientele that's more serious about the work? Like, is that weird and hard for you to decide?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I think over the years, my rate has slowly gone up. Only because the way that I can justify it is because, like, maybe my skill has gotten it's refined. I've refined my skills a little bit more. Or maybe like when I'm gilding in 23 karat gold leaf, that's like, such a high level of sign. I consider it as one of the highest levels of sign painting.
Yep. So you feel more comfortable.
So as I
more.
graduate into those levels of sign painting, I think it deserves a higher rate. You know what I mean?
Is it hard to like, okay, I'm going to just use an example. You're going to Bob's auto shop.
Sure.
And he wants a sign, and you go and you give him the estimate. And do people always try to negotiate with you? It seems like such an art form that it would feel like I'm devaluing your art in effect.
Right. It's very situational because like some people are not romanticizing that it's hand painted.
Yep.
Some people, they're just like, I want a sign and this is my budget and I don't want to go over that because I just don't have the money. Some people, they're like, oh, I want it hand painted because like I love, hand painted letters and I want an artist to have their touch on my building. So there's two very different sides of why someone will get a.
And do you do both equally?
Yeah.
Even though you probably love the second customer just
yeah.
because.
I mean, oftentimes I'll be working with, like, let's say a mom and pop shop,
Yep.
and like I know probably that they've gathered up all their spare money just to open up, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give these people a break, and I'm gonna do what I can
Yeah.
to make it financially feasible for them. And then sometimes, I get a kick out of doing, like if they give me more creative freedom.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, well, I can give them a break because they're kind of putting more trust in me to kind of like branch out in my skill set and show that I can do more than just like the average.
And then it's a marketing
whatever.
opportunity too,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an organic process.
Do you paint for fun?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And
not as much as I would like to.
I was going to ask if that suffers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. I don't know. At the end of a long work day, the last thing I want to do is focus my eyes on some more painting. Like in the wintertime, sign painting slows down a bit because, you can't paint outside.
Sure.
And taxes and the new year and, Christmas. There's all these factors why, my business slows down when it's cold. And so I get to paint more in my studio when it's the winter time.
Do you ever do like a gallery show, or have you ever had just a show?
I have. When I was first starting, I actually wrote a grant, and received a grant to like buy sign painting materials, buy gold leaf, and all these other tools. And a part of that grant was that I had to show, what I was learning and practicing. So
That's
I had
smart.
an art show there. But right now, I actually just got asked to be in an art show in LA. It's a alphabet art show where one sign painter will paint a letter of the alphabet, and there's sign painters, there's calligraphers, graffiti writers, and
Cool.
it's like it's a pretty cool concept. So I think there's going to be like a total of 6 alphabets, and so I'm doing the letter R for the sign painter, the sign painting.
So
aspect.
that would, if there's 6 alphabets, that's going to bring in a lot of artists.
Yeah, it's a
Is
lot
it
of
like
people.
a show, or is it something like an exhibition that people can go to?
Yeah. It's at this gallery called Known Gallery in LA, and the show I believe is actually going to travel around.
That sounds
and I
amazing.
think it's going to travel around like the United States first, and then I think it might be going overseas.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's going to travel around a little bit. And then another sign painter friend of mine in Chicago, they are putting together an art show as well. And so these 2 people in the same month were like, hey, you want to be in an art show? I was like, sure.
Yeah,
Sounds fun. Let's do it.
Okay, totally random.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend, and I'm totally thinking about him because he's an artist, he's a graphic designer kind of by trade, and he designs record albums,
Cool.
basically. He
Yeah,
does
yeah.
record art. Kai Ahrens, he grew up here.
Nice.
And he's in Ventura, and he's got these pop-ups that he's doing all the time, and now he's pop-up screen printing kind of right on site and doing some
Yeah.
cool things like that. Can you see this like sign painting and this letters like transferring into other mediums?
Yeah. I do know a lot of sign painters that are, half designers, half sign painters.
Yep.
So in that sense, I can totally see it. I think the possibilities are really endless. I guess it's just kind of like what
do you want to do?
how do you want to spend your time? Where do you want to put your efforts?
What do you worry about? Like when you lay in bed and like, oh, my business.
I'm never settled. Like I'm always want to grow, and I'm always like reaching for this end goal of like, I want to bring back the hand painted advertisements, and they do it in LA, they do it in New York. It's not really here in the Midwest or Minneapolis, and
But
like,
it could be.
Totally. There's a few hurdles that I have to figure out and jump over, but I'm always kind of striving towards that end goal and whatnot. So.
I think I do some work with First Avenue, and I always, when I drive by that building, it's just like so branded, so marketed, and Clockwork advertising agency too in Northeast has just this wholly painted building, and I just can see that as being something cool that could come back, and
totally.
I hope you're on the forefront of that.
Yeah. What kind of like keeps me going? Well, it's not the reason why I'm doing it, but my great grandfather was a sign painter,
Yep.
and I didn't know this until after I was working at Sign Mines in Northeast.
Really?
And so this big discovery, I was just like, whoa, what the heck? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And it really lit, a fire into my butt. And I've just kind of been, I've always thought it'd be like, so he worked for the largest outdoor advertising company at his time. And I was just like, throughout the years, I'm like, I've always just wanted to do something similar.
Yeah.
I just love painting big. I love painting outside on ladders, hanging, high in the air, like
Yeah.
just all of the above. Just like that's why I love doing what I'm doing, is because at the end of the day, I just like painting, and I've always liked climbing, buildings, and
You look pretty wiry, like you could climb a wall pretty easily. Do you practice?
practice
Do you-
climbing.
Yeah, like do you go to like vertical endeavors,
I-
and are you literally
I
a climber?
actually do. Yeah. I the bouldering gym in Northeast.
Yep.
I've been climbing there, and it's fun.
It's cool to think about the idea of like you creating a business,
Mhm.
not that you don't have a business, because of course you do,
Yeah.
but that you like maybe have an ad agency in effect that specializes in
Sure.
hand lettered
Right,
work and brands, and then could you train other sign painters
Yeah.
beneath you?
Yeah. It's I never really, when I was starting, I never was like, oh, I want to own my own business. Or
Yeah.
I want to be a sole proprietor. Or I want to do this. I never thought about it like that. It just kind of turned into it. But I actually just recently started hiring on one of my first helpers. And it would be really awesome to be able to grow the business into trusting other workers below me
Yeah.
to like be like, hey, go to this job, here's the patterns, and then they take care of that, or at least working on it together. I think the person, or if someone wants to do it, a lot of people don't want to put in the hard legwork before they get into it. You
Yep.
know what I mean? The hours of just painting letter after letter after letter and just practicing. They kind of want someone to like just kind of hand it to them.
Yep.
At least what I've gotten a sense of, when people email about like, hey, I've always wanted to learn sign painting. And then they kind of just want the easy way, and not the hard way.
And
yeah.
I think too, that's part of maybe what's the difference between like a craft person and
Yeah. Yeah.
someone that's just like, oh, I think this would be cool and I could make some money doing it. And
Right. I hear a lot of people say like, oh, I can't, like, how do you do that? I'd get so bored, or like, I don't know how you can do that. And I think it's like the difference of like wanting to, like getting lost in painting letters.
Yeah.
It's like therapy, or like
Sure.
therapeutic.
You're an artist. That's the difference.
Yeah. And so it's very enjoyable. I can just get lost in painting letters. Like you just, you don't think about it. You're just doing it,
Do you wake up in the middle of the night and like have something in your head and you quick jot it down, or?
Sometimes, but I primarily just sleep like a rock. I'm just like out. I just fall asleep when my head hits the pillow.
Are you like getting up early in the morning so you can take advantage of all the sunlight and?
Yeah, well, it's job by job basis. Like about a month ago, I was working a job at Brits where they only allowed me to work from 5:30 in the morning till 10:30 in the morning.
Yep.
So, job by job basis, I will. But some days I'm working really late in the studio, and,
Yep.
and some days the wall has to warm up because it's too cool. And so it's pretty situational which
Yeah.
job I'm working on to when I'm waking up. I wish I woke up earlier, to be honest. But
Well-
I'll make myself do it when I need to.
Sure. What do you like when you go out and you do fun stuff? Like,
Mhm.
what do you do for fun? What do you like to do for your hobbies?
I ride a lot of bikes. I race bikes.
Like bicycles or
bicycles.
motorcycles? Bicycles?
Yeah, bicycles. I ride motorcycles as well. Basically, if I'm not painting signs, I'm doing something active.
There's some really cool old lettering on motorcycles.
Yeah.
My husband has rebuilds
Cool.
BMWs and
Cool.
Ducatis and all kinds of
Yeah.
weird bikes. And
Yeah.
We had one from the 1940s. It was a BMW, like 2-seater police bike.
Wow, cool.
That had like a big fat seat. It was such a
Yeah.
cool bike, and the lettering on that thing was
That's
just
cool.
gorgeous.
That's sweet. Like I'd say 5 years ago, I flew to Germany to just take photos of old signs throughout Europe, and I bought a motorcycle in Berlin, and I just drove around Europe, just going city to city and just documenting old sign painting.
That sounds really cool.
And I had old BMW. It was cool.
He'd be so jealous. I'll have to have him listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta listen to this dude.
I get along with a lot of old guys because they really appreciate cool old things.
Yeah.
And I, sign painting, lettering, motorcycles, whatever.
Yeah, it's all sort of craft
Yeah.
and the aesthetic, I guess. And
Yeah.
maybe it's a lifestyle too
Yeah, probably.
of what you gravitate towards. But that doesn't extend really in like, I'm just looking at you, like, does it extend in your clothes or your
No.
cars or?
No. I accept the time period that I'm in now. I don't pretend I'm in like
You're not going to
the
Jaime's
1950s.
Haberdashery
No.
and
No.
get a new suit.
I appreciate that stuff, but I don't
Yeah.
dress like that or anything.
Do you, from a business standpoint, like, how are you good at like your finances, and are you good at keeping track of stuff? And it's kind of a lot to ask you, who clearly is an artist, to have both sides of your brain going at the same way.
Right. Yeah, it's a constant learning process, and like I'm just when I first started out, like I said, I never wanted to necessarily own my own business,
Yep.
but you slowly just figure it out. You might, take a hit here or there, but you learn from it. And every year, you try to just get a little bit better at
Yep.
the whole business side of it. I'm always trying to keep clients happy and respond to emails fast enough. But man, being a one-man show, if your hand's not being busy, if your painting hand isn't busy, you're not making money. Like, you don't make money typing emails.
Yeah,
you know
you
what I
don't make
mean?
money sitting here either.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's like, oh my gosh, it's prime time and it's nice out. Maybe you need a virtual assistant, someone who
know.
can do all
That
that
would be
sort of
nice.
legwork for you.
That would be nice, yeah. I think people appreciate the personalized side of it, though.
Yeah.
Like really knowing that they're talking with the owner,
Yep.
being able to ask like the genuine questions, or getting down to brass
Yep.
tacks, right away.
Well, it's been really great to talk to you. Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Yeah.
Your Tattersall sign, is it done yet?
Oh, yeah, it's done. Got
Okay,
that
I
done
haven't
in
been
2
by
days.
since I saw you, so
Yeah.
I need to go back there and
Yeah,
check it
yeah.
out. And Spy House in Highland Park. Any other quick ones you want to point out?
Bauhaus Brew Labs,
Oh,
painted
sure.
that guy. A few of the Spy Houses. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming in.
absolutely.